Thank you. First of all, may I regret not having Miguel Catalina here. He's a fantastic guy. He is forest engineer and is architect. He has been working for more than 20 years in the forest fire extinction in the province of Malaga in Andalusia, which is one of the most dangerous places to live in terms of wildland urban interface in Spain. He has been dealing with this operational part, but also in the research part. So it is a very interesting guy. I really regret not having him here, but he had another conference, so next time. So he asked me to briefly present his work on the vulnerability of houses. When I talk vulnerability or susceptibilities, both of them, susceptibility and exposure to forest fires. So I gathered here very briefly the ideas of this person, Miguel Ángel Catalina. Currently, he is director of the Provincial Service of Forest Fires for the Andalusia region. On bring here basically some of the ideas and findings of the experimental work he has done on his own laboratory, built by himself with his money, that complements perfectly the work done by laboratories like what we have been presented by Elena and Professor Viegas. What I'm going to do right now in a few minutes is just to present some excerpt from the book he wrote with the findings, which is called in Spanish Los edificios en los incendios de interfase urbano-forestal, which is this one that I have here in my hand. I have no commission for selling this book, but I recommend reading it because it's maybe the only one that we find with this gathered information from forest fires and put in a technical language, which are the relationships between the forest fires and the vulnerability. Basically, he says a number of things about general considerations, the surrounding fields and fire load, building design, siding, walls, roofing, and windowing. Some of the ideas that we are going to see here have been already said by many of you, and we know that. The difference is that this person has gathered information and put it all in an ordered way. In regard to general considerations, some of the things, important things that he points out are, first, buildings in the wildland urban interface are frequently poorly equipped with the fire protection measures, and himself as architect wonders why buildings that we have in the cities are by law equipped by certain devices to protect from fires, but we don't have in fire-prone areas the houses are protected. Besides, the access to houses located in the mountains is frequently very difficult. He himself have suffered that, trying to reach to some of the houses. Some of them are non-legal houses with no address, no nothing. Even though the owners are expecting, are claiming, please, come to my house very quickly. There's no way to get there quickly. Houses located in box canyons or slopes aligned with dominant winds are much more vulnerable. We already know that, but it's one of the conclusions. And all this points out to the need to have a map who clearly and objectively draws which are the places in the terrain which are or are not ready to be inhabited by houses. In regard to the surrounding fields, we have been talking about that so much. First of all, the trees and shrubs removal around the house is not solving the problem. It's just part of the solution, but it's not the solution. Be aware that in Andalusia, the sun hits very hard, and shadow for the owners is a big value. So ask them to remove trees is, it's like killing his son or something like that. No, don't touch my tree. I'm here because of my tree. So besides the green edges and that field inside them between lots is a key factor. He found what we suspect, that the green edges contain a lot of dead material. When it ignites, it's very difficult to put out. Vegetation close to the house, climbing vegetation in the sidings, entail flames touching the house, sidings and windows. And he's not talking about very large flames or intense or extreme fires. He's talking about flames touching the house, whatever flame it is. And see, he says that it depends on the species, irrigation regime, pruning, edge clipping, factors affecting total fire load surrounding the house. Particularly, we talk about when you have these lots, which are very expensive. Lots tend to be smaller and smaller, so the edges are closer and closer to the house. And then the different owners, they are competing each other to see who has the best maintained, the best clipped edge, and that creates these wall-like edges, with a lot of material inside because the sun is not entering, so the material inside is dead. Palm trees, we have been presented here by Ivan. Palm trees, due to their shape, are prone to accumulate firebrands in the top where dead fuel material is present. So any structure, any tree, anything that is gathering these particles, which are, let's say, dead material from the trees, are also gathering other particles, which are the fire embers. So the fuel and the fire encounter exactly in the same place. He's talking about the importance of having vehicles near or inside the houses in open garage. A serious problem given that the 20% of the total weight is readily available fuel ready to burn. And secondly, auxiliary buildings near the house, like and other installations between 3 to 20 meters, frequently entails the initial fire and then touching the house and creating this destruction. In regard to the building design, he finds that buildings with irregular shapes are more vulnerable due to the shape factor. Buildings with vertical shapes channel smoke and convective heat toward the eaves and the roofing, creating more exposure to heat. The smoke hitting the house, it's very important to consider that. We didn't speak too much about smoke, and my question to Luis Mario was pointed to that. Smoke is the factor that first arrives, and in most of the cases is the only one factor uh, forcing us to start evacuation. He says that we have to understand which is the composition, density, amount, which are the entrance points, pressure gradient, open windows, open doors inside, and so. He told me personally, I don't understand what we have these protocols in structural fires. If you run away closing doors. This is everybody knows that. You are running away closing doors to put some barriers to the fire. And we do not provide this advice in the wildland neural interface. Why? What we have seen and confirmed by our colleagues in the ADAI, open doors inside the house and open windows in the leeward wall favor smoke and firebrands entrance and transit across the house, creating more likelihood to destruction. And this applies also to chimney draft. That was discussion in Spain. What do you do with the chimney draft? You open it, you close it. On all sides, if you close it, you do not create this pressure differential. It's more unlikely that smoke and embers are entering the house. In regard to building design, all the horizontal elements, eaves, terrace, and so, create this increase of section. So when the air is moving, it is a loss of air velocity in some trials on turbulences, entails accumulation fire embers, where you have accumulation as well of fuel. So we have points of start ignition near the house. Owning and other shadowing devices, depending on the material, whether they are clothes, plastic, or so, may bring fire inside the building, create this continuity from the outside to the inside. He's talking a lot about sidings and they play a key role in transferring heat to the site of the houses. We have been presenting something like that from our colleagues from the Laboratory of Civil Engineering. Traditional building, again, is the same reading. Materials and method like brick, stone, and so have larger thermal inertia. You have some figures here from brick wall. That's what we have. Mortar, cement, iron, and wood. When exposed to enough heat flux, siding might crack and eventually have mechanical failure. It may happen when you have a continuous action of the heat source. Sidings transmit heat to the interior. That's important if we shelter in place. We have to know that the heat outside is much more than inside, but the walls, they are transmitting part of the heat, and that the roofing is the thinnest section of this skin. In terms of the roofing, there are a number of things that has surprised me, but when you see the pictures, it's true that happens. It's true in the real fires, not in laboratory. He says that traditional Arabic clay tiles, that what we have normally in Spain, break when they are exposed to intense fire, in interstitial mortar crack as well. What that means intense fire is not necessarily high intensity, but very quick change in temperature. Some non-maintained tiles entail, or tiles missing entail a potential emissions of fire. That's something that our colleagues told us from ADAI. They made some experiments on that. That's let's say common conclusion. Thin clay tiles normally break by the action of flame or heavy firebrand contact. This is something that surprised me a lot, because the clay by nature is fire resistant. But as he says, when you have very punctual action of fire or heat source with a very strong gradient of temperature, some cracking occurs. Fire is transmitted through the wood behind the roofing, so we may think that what he has observed in real fires, the fire enters and below the roofing is what we have the fire acting. And firefighting, dropping water on top, do not reach fire, which consumes and destroys roofing. So any dropping on top of the roofs is useless. Burnable materials such as wood stems in eaves bring fires to interiors. Again, we have this continuity outside, inside. The fire through the stems come inside the fire, the house. And to the opposite what was said here before, he finds that flat roofing is much more resistant to fire action, as they are built with mortar, reinforced mortar, which has more inertial mass. So we have a flat, at least in Spain, is prepared to resist much heavier fire load. And finally, what has been said here, and it's a common message, all the research and firefighters said the same. If you want to save a house, start thinking about the windowing. Windows play a key role in house vulnerability. May I say 60% of this book is talking about windows, and all the experiments about windows. He says that we have to take into account that there are a number of phenomena when exposing a window to a fire. There's breaking of the frame, loss of structural capacity of the frame, and it collapses, glass breaking, glass outburst, and glass melting. Some of the things he says is that broken glass may entail the entrance of smoke, firebrands, fire flames. We know that. But to the contrary, what was said here, something interesting is it is true that the double hermetic glass, which include an interstitial space with gas inside, which is hermetic, when it is heated, particularly when you have kind of a blind of a curtain in the indoors, some of the heat reflects back to the window, and the gases start to heat more and more and more and expands, and this creates an internal pressure which is not released, then contributes to the cracking of the glass. He has many examples of that on real fires. However, the heat transmitted through the DHG depends on gas chamber width, and of course, as our colleagues found, in the indoor glass, it's much the temperature is much less than the outdoor glass. Horizontal windows, like the, I don't know how to say it in English, las claraboyas, nos entendemos, ¿no? Roof windows. May receive eventually the fire embers and usually break with the direct action of firebrands. He insists when you have a source of heat, even a tiny one, touching the glass, there's a differential temperature which may entail the appearance of cracks and eventually the breaking of the glass. Asymmetric differential heating entails mechanical tensions and deformations which may lead to the appearance of cracks and eventually glass breaking. He found that at difference beyond 30 degrees centigrade in a small portion of the glass may entail this appearance of cracks. These cracks, what does is to weaken the glass, and with the effect of wind or a particle may entail the total collapse of the window. Another interesting thing, that's something that we try to do in this project, in Wuiwatch project, is to see to which extent the partial screen of the glass surface contribute to this difference heating. We have the frame, which is a screening, this blocking the radiation, but you have the window, the glass, which is not. There's a big difference between the temperature of the glass, which has this screen, and the other would not. And there's what he has observed many times in many fires where the cracks appears. So, for example, white framings, adhesive films, or internal coatings reflecting back the radiation. I was asking himself why sometimes putting water in the glass has received heat leads to the breaking of the glass. It's obvious. If it has a temperature, you apply not uniformly some water, creates this gradient and breaks. And finally, about shutters and blinds, is more or less what our colleagues have found, but his findings are based on the observation in real fires. Blinds down constitute another layer of protection against radiation as far as they keep integrity, as our colleagues have found in the laboratory. But something interesting thing is about the shutter and blind boxes. When you keep all the shutter roll up, it's a larger mass of burning material which is in contact with the interior and frequently bring the fire inside the house through the groove. So only for that it's better to put the blinds down. Well, I hope you have found all these findings interesting. Again, I recommend to read this book on anything that many other questions you may have. We can transfer them to Miguel Catalina. I hope for the next workshop he's present and give us more details on that. Thank you.